and explained it. I want to take something else, which is because we're going to have to wrap up soon. But these are things that we who engage in interfaith debate, have this thrown at us all the time. And this is something else which fascinated me. Surah Nisa, verse 434, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. Men shall take full care of the woman with those bounties that Allah has bestowed upon them. But the important thing here, the verse which actually triggered me here was that the word which you've translated وَضْرِبُهُنَّ. Now, daraba, in fact, I don't think there's every single translation in the world, and missionaries have thrown this out at all the time, that the Quran promotes domestic violence. The Quran tells you to beat women. Some translators say, tap them lightly, beat them lightly. What is quite fascinating for me is that for the first time, and I've seen this, I've never seen this before, you translate that verses, and as for those women whose condescension you have reason to fear, admonish them first, then leave them alone in bed, then copulate with them. And in your footnote, you've got there, وَإِدْرِبُهُنَّ is not synonymous with وَأَنْكِحُهُنَّ, in that the former refers to sexual intercourse without the love, passion, emotions. But here the ayat is referring to an attempt, sexually speaking, between a couple to engage in copulation in order to determine whether they could kickstart some degree of romance or passion. I want to ask this question. I don't have a problem with the translation. I must tell you, I have no problem with it. And I'm probably going to use it in debates in the future. But, what was the exegetical basis, or what was the linguistic justification for this? Because when I look at Lisan al-Arab and even Lane's lexicon, they give alternatives to beat, as, for example, separate or parting. How did you come to this particular translation? This is the only translation in the world. Even Amina Wadood, who, for example, butchers it and translates it else in some other way. But this is the only translation in the world where Surah 4, verse 34, you don't translate daraba as beat, the derivative, you translate it as copulate. What was the basis for that? And how did you come to that? And I'm by no means an Arabic scholar, so I cannot challenge you in any way on that point.
Yeah, it's just simple linguistic investigation. You see, there's two a philosophical approach to the Arabic language. It's called one is called a school of al-Basra, the other is called school of al-Kufa. The school of al-Kufa is the one that I sort of belong to, and they consider the past tense to be the origin of because the Arabic language is a derivative language. You derive many words from a source word. So the past tense I consider to be the source word. So you go to the past tense here is daraba. That's the past tense. You go to these dictionaries, and most of the times you're going to find, if not 99.99% of the times, you're going to find the definition of the word along, hit or strike or something like that. And it keeps on going down the road. Now, the word daraba also can have another meaning when it is followed by a preposition. Daraba an, daraba ala, daraba fi, daraba li. So all of these have shades of different meanings. Now, the word, when an animal, in the Arabic language, when an animal, and let me put this in words that everyone can understand. When an animal has sex with another animal, you can't call that nikah. Nikah is when a male and a female come together with the sexual attraction, in addition to mawadda and rahma. This is in another ayah in the Quran says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. So in addition to the sexual conjoinment of male and female, there is in that conjoinment, mawadda, the exchange of love and mercy. In the particular ayah you are looking at, or we are looking at in Surah An-Nisa, there is a frigidity of emotions between male and female, husband and wife. So when that frigidity does away with mawadda and rahma, the sexual act cannot be described as nikah. It has to be described as dirab. Dirab. So right now, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, even though mawadda and rahma is absent, you still come together sexually to probe the depth of your feelings towards each other. You will not be able to understand if you can rejoin in the same affection and love, the share of it that you had, except if you do this. That's the final judgment of whether a marriage can be resumed or not. So that's why the word فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ was used instead of the word فَانْكِحُوهُنَّ. The word nikah would not have worked here because nikah means there is mawadda and rahma between them. But now the mawadda and rahma is absent, so it becomes more or less like animals coming together. It's a mild way, it's an indirect way of saying just have sex to prove to yourselves whether you can rejoin as a husband and wife or whether that original thrust for attachment is absent and you can